Imperfect Thriving, Episode 54, Chris Ross's Win-Win Effect. I'm Catherine Ely, former attorney turned licensed counselor and coach. Oh yeah, and recovering perfectionist. It wasn't long ago that my self-criticism and fear kept me from having the self-worth, confidence, and courage to make my life my own. Through life lessons learned and by going back to school in my 40s, I am finally enjoying my life in a way I never thought possible, and it is amazing. I want you right here with me. No need for you to go back to school either. I created this podcast to show you the way to the imperfect thriving kind of life, based on what you value, filled with self-worth, confidence, way more joy, and no more regrets. So let's go.
Yes, 100%. And I love that you're saying it that way, because every single person on this planet is unique and special and different in their own little way. The ones that discover their purpose and they're aligned and polarizing out that frequency and the true essence of them, those are the ones that realize that you're very unique and they're bringing something extra to the table that no one else can duplicate those results.
On today's show, I have Chris Ross. Chris is one of the world's leading experts on high-performance sales teams. He specializes in training international business executives on his win-win effect, which benefits both sides of the buyer-seller relationship. Having always been fascinated with broadcasting and media, Chris has quickly turned his network corporation into a podcasting powerhouse. His newest venture is Winject, Inc., the home of his top-ranked podcast show, The Win-Win Effect, and Winject Radio. And he has begun adding other shows to the network to help grow listenership. In this Imperfect Thriving episode, we go way beyond Chris's success in business, which is just the tip of the iceberg of who he is. And we get down to what makes Chris Chris, his special sauce, his ME-ness. Chris shares with us his win-win effect. We talk about the darkest time in his life and what he gained from it. And what makes Chris Chris, his special sauce. What drives Chris to do what he does, and all about his newest big venture. This is a real and raw conversation in which this very private person lets us dive in to the depth of his essence as a human being. I won't make you wait any longer. So, as many of you already know, this January is all about detoxing and decluttering at the Imperfect Thriving podcast. I hope that you enjoyed last week's episode about decluttering our closets and why that is so necessary. Upcoming episodes are going to be decluttering our relationships, our environments, our minds, and our calendars. And these episodes are going to release every Wednesday as usual, but there are a couple of these are going to be bonus episodes, which are going to be released on random days. Now, the reason I want you to know this is so that you can go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so that you don't miss an episode of decluttering. And there are going to be free downloads to go with some of these episodes. I'm really excited about all of us sort of letting go of the dead weight and of the things that have been cluttering our lives and holding us back and keeping us from having the kind of clarity that we need to have to go in the direction that we want to go. So if you have any friends or family that you think this will help, don't forget to share the podcast with them. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Chris, I am so excited to have you on the show today. Thank you for being here.
I'm blessed. I should say thank you to you. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this interview for quite a while since our last couple of conversations that we've had, and know that the time zone difference right now isn't always the best thing, and trying to figure out the right times to serve your audience, because obviously I'm in London right now. But I'm thoroughly excited for the listeners that are tuning in right now, listening to the show. I'm hoping that you guys can really take something away from this and implement in your life, and hopefully serve you in any kind of capacity. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I know that you have had an amazing career so far. And I say so far because I know that you have so much left that you want to do. But take our listeners on a little bit of a timeline of how you got started in your career and where you are today.
Great way to start off. Granted, I feel like I'm 39 years young, but I've lived a lot of different lives growing up and going through my journey. I have a lot of pivotal moments and a lot of transitions. But I'm from Charleston, South Carolina originally, raised by two beautiful parents that gave me nothing but love and joy and created a great household, but we didn't come from a lot of money. My older sister, she was born handicapped and she passed away, unfortunately, when she was 18. I was about turned 16. I was 15 at the time in 1997. And I have a younger sister. I have three nieces. From my little sister, I love them like they're my children. I have a child myself. But come from a very strong niche family, an Italian type of family. So it was like, even like when I was growing up in Charleston, we didn't have a lot of money and obviously and whatnot, but we had a lot of love and a lot of structure and a lot of family and a lot of core values. So I come from really a good family with really strong morals and values. So we all lived on one street. After high school, I played sports. I was always good in sports. I was always the active kid. My mom, if I was talking to her this past week and she was talking about it, like my youngest niece, Kennedy, she has a lot of me in her, I guess, in the way that she reminds. My mom watches these, obviously, especially with COVID stuff. So she watches them and she cries when she has to come inside. I was always an outside kid, but then I just loved that type of stuff. Very active, went to the military, went to the Navy, very blessed individual and serving my country for 5 years, 2 tours of Iraqi freedom, did patrolling in the Red Sea and Bahrain for 2 deployments. Other deployment before 9/11 was counter narcotics. And the reason why I'm telling you that part, because that took a lot from my experiences in the Navy, especially with the training, how to structure things, leadership, leading from the front, and also leading from the back and making sure no one falls behind. Then I made that transition to college money, then started off in like sales and chemicals. And then 2007-ish happened. And 2008, so the chemicals obviously went down. Then I made a transition to education sales, and I really started to scratch the surface on me discovering my purpose in life. And that was reaching prospective clients, prospective students, and enrolling them into trade school programs. I did that very well. I was one of the top rated reps in the nation. And I was speaking on stage, going to Vegas and meeting some of the, I guess it was people that call themselves internet marketers now. They all come from the education space and lead gen. So, and that's where I made that transition, started consulting for companies, went up to entrepreneurship about 8 years ago now, and did extremely well. Went back from there, came from education, made a good amount of capital. Then I went back to the trade school industry, started building out some programs, got those. I was the world's first and only sales and business trade schools got nationally accredited. So now 60 corporations, not own, but they operate that brand. It's obviously rebranding. It's not my voice or my face anymore, but it's my words. Built that out, sold that to a program, and made extreme amount of good money. And I was so blessed to have that opportunity. But I just went through my journey. Then what I'm doing now, obviously the podcasting network, I have the first couple seasons of the Win-Win Effect. I had it in the contracts with the trade schools of me kind of teaching them the win-win effect, that methodology that I've developed over the years and honing in on my craft. Everyone needs to win. I can't enroll someone into a program if they're not going to do well, pass a review, and it's not going to benefit their life. There's no buyer remorse. And I don't want to get like in that kind of conversation right off the bat, but I have a really strong views and strong feelings with people calling themselves sales gurus. They don't know anything about sales. They might know how to persuade people. I don't sell people. I serve people and I help people. That's how selling is done. It's supposed to be done morally and ethically. So going from there, and then the podcast, I had it set up in some deals where they would have to listen to the show to trade school. So that taught them how to sell their program, to sell the program that I sold them. So that helped out with the downloads. So the first year of the podcast, I went from maybe my mom will listen, maybe my cat will listen, right? But now it went over about 2 million downloads in the first year, which was extreme amount of success and came out of nowhere. And I'm just so grateful. And I was like, I even was talking to people that, obviously we introduced us, Adam, and he's got his own podcast and stuff. And you got Justin Shank, you got some major name Bogart, you got all these great people that I've met through this podcasting journey. And now we're developing our own podcasting network. And I know it's more of a long-winded type of answer, but kind of giving your students and giving your listeners a little bit more in depth on where I come from in the world, and not just what I do for a living, but why I do it.
That's a great answer, and I appreciate that very broad overview. There are so many things that I want to dig into there. I'm afraid that I'm going to forget one of them. But I love, love, love the win-win effect, and the podcast for sure. Tell our listeners exactly what is behind the win-win effect.
The win-win effect is a human-based code for human collaboration, especially in business. It's all about human interaction. So say, for instance, if I was on a call with somebody that maybe doesn't know what they need to do in life, and they are looking to the person that's calling them or working with them as a person of influence or a person of that maybe has credibility in the game, and obviously pointing them in the right direction, giving a recommendation. The win-win effect, it needs to be a win for them, needs to be a win for the company, needs to be a win for the person they're working with, and a win in all. And the only way to really do that is you have to make a complete shift in living an abundant lifestyle, not a just abundant mindset, abundant lifestyle. So to me, the win-win effect is that's the effect that I have on others. And I don't just try to enroll someone or enroll a company. I'm just doing it in a different capacity now, obviously working with major corporations. I'm talking about like Fortune 500 companies. But that's what they love about it, because that's where you have to have an extreme amount of emotional intelligence, have to have that. And I discovered this even recently over the past year, and some of my spiritual journey and some of the things I had to overcome with my anxiety and depression and whatnot. Not really much depression, just more of having, like, my body had a panic attack without even me knowing, because I was suppressing certain emotions and trying to just do what I needed to do. But that's the whole part. It's about realigning and rechanneling things every single day. That's the process. You hear some of the major players, I mean, even the Elon Musk in the world, talk about a routine in the morning. I put myself through a very structured routine every single day to be able to do what I do on the levels that I'm doing it. I don't just wake up and I'm doing it. I have to make that happen. So that's what win-win is me putting in the work on myself, and also being able to be in a situation where I'm able to serve on that type of capacity for everyone else to win as well. And if I wasn't putting in the work myself, they're not going to feel that from me.
Yes. So when you used to get on sales calls to sell something to someone, what I'm hearing is you wouldn't get on that call knowing exactly what you were going to sell and that you had to sell it to this person. It was just as much of, what does this person need?
Mm-hmm. And sometimes they want something. Wants and needs are completely different.
Yeah.
And then they'll go, well, I want to buy this. I've even had students and people say that to me. I want to enroll into this program. Well, you're not qualified to work on that program. So I don't know if it's going to work out for you. My job is for me to break down your needs and wants and desires, and what are you really wanting from this particular program, product, or service, or good? And is it going to help you in the next 1, 3 to 5, 10 years? Is it going to serve you? If it's not going to serve you, then you're not the right fit. I've mentioned this to a couple of people that I'm not going to name drop on, some of the salespeople. They love that way of thinking and they love that approach because I take it away from them at the beginning. You can't buy what I'm selling. I don't even know what I'm going to sell you. I don't know if you're going to be a good fit. And I let them know right at the beginning, that first call. Listen, Catherine, like, what I'm here to do is kind of observe by asking you some questions and discover an area's opportunity for you. If I feel at any part of this conversation that I don't feel you might be a good fit, at least what I'll do is I'll point you in the right direction. From what I just mentioned and what I just told you, what did you hear me say? Why? And that gets them to, that's, you're looking for that engagement. And that's the piece right there where it develops a lot of trust. That's the foundation.
Yeah, you are telling them that you want to get to the bottom of exactly what they can use to benefit them now and in the future.
100%.
Not just selling them something.
Mm-hmm.
That is the win-win effect. So I do quite a bit of self-value work with my clients because I know that is the foundation upon which we build our lives. If we don't have self-value, we are severely limiting our potential.
100%.
It took me 49 years to realize I was special. Not more special than anyone else, not less special than anyone else, but just that I'm special because I bring something to the table that no one else can bring in any given situation, and that's my me-ness.
Yes, 100%. And I love that you're saying it that way, because every single person on this planet is unique and special and different in their own little way. The ones that discover their purpose and they're aligned and polarizing out that frequency and the true essence of them, those are the ones that realize that you're very unique and they're bringing something extra to the table that no one else can duplicate those results. I love that you said that.
Well, thank you. It took me a long time to cherish my me-ness, because you have to take what you used to see as your flaws, right, and put them in the entire picture of, well, that makes me and not the next person.
Yeah, it's your competitive advantage, 100%.
I help my clients do the same. I'm wondering what it is that sets you apart, that is your you-ness that you bring to the table that nobody else does.
I love that you asked that question. Thank you for that question. Defining your competitive advantage it can be very strenuous and a process. But if you're able to go back into some of your, I guess, dark times in your life, sometimes the best things that happen and what you're able to manifest come from the darkest moments of your life and memories. For myself, it came from my older sister that wasn't able to speak and walk and talk. There's a lot of things we take it for granted and especially nowadays. I was in a position, even with a very young child, and being in the same crib as my older sister, deceased sister, Sue Ellen, I would communicate to her through nonverbal communication. That's a connection. And that's where I really defined my competitive advantage. And that's where I developed so much emotional intelligence. I was able to read exactly what she needed from me. I told a story about this in a previous conversation, I think with Shannon Connery. Do you know her? She's a PhD, Denver, Colorado. She's a phenomenal individual. Great story. I'll have to introduce you.
Okay.
Have to remind me. Beautiful lady. Like, her soul is just so beautiful, like yourself with what you do for a living. She was asking me questions. And that's where I really developed a lot of emotional intelligence and not paying attention to what people are telling me verbally. I'm able to understand what their intentions are and what they should be saying to me and why they're not saying certain things. And I'll start identifying patterns of behavior that turn into personality traits as they're not careful, and it's self-sabotage. I meet a lot of people, and over the years, that have come to me 10 years after working with me and go, I just wanted to tell you, you changed my life, and I appreciate you. That means more to me than any type of dollar amount. That means so much to me because that's my competitive advantage, and I'm aligned with my purpose in life. This is what brings me fulfillment. Now, I don't do what I do for a living to make money. That's just a byproduct, and I know that a lot of people say that, but I really believe that. I feel that that's my life. Mm-hmm. And those are the ones where be able to tap into that competitive advantage. You talk about that me-ness. That's why we're able to do what we do. And do it at less time. It's like cutting through people's, I guess, the barriers they put up and for protection, right?
Yes.
Fight or flight, they put it for protection. I'm able to cut through those like a hot knife in butter. I cut right through it and I go right to the core and the root and the nucleus of the problem.
And you can see what they need even before they know it.
100%.
Is that you were looking out for your sister's needs that she couldn't communicate in the same way a lot of us do. And you were able to not just listen to words, but really look into that person and see what are their deepest needs? What do they want most in the world? Because what they want most is definitely propelled by what they need.
100%. And this is where I fell into, I guess you would say, a really difficult time. I've had all this success and over the years, and I'm very fortunate. My first year in entrepreneurship didn't really work out that well, but that's, I guess, every entrepreneur experienced that at some point. Didn't like go bankrupt or lose, but I didn't have a lot. I made a really good amount of money. Just if I had a lot of holes in my business financially, I was paying a bunch of money. It was stupid, like not outsourcing, structuring contracts the way I did. But when I've really failed in life and I had an amazing amount of success, I mean, selling companies for $12 million, getting to 8-figure type of numbers, which I don't even like to talk about it sometimes on all that success, but people see that as success, but that's not success for me. Success for me was when my daughter was born and then my ex-relationship was dissolving and obviously not really working out and we were struggling in our relationship. She was resenting me and how hard I was working and all the effort I was putting into businesses, and I wasn't putting forth the same effort into myself and also with her. Because I can do all the emotional intelligence stuff tactically with students and with businesses, but I wasn't 100% aligned with me.
So what did that dark part of your life look like? Paint us the picture of what that looked like for you.
I love what you just said, just paint a picture. And what it looked like for me is the picture outside looking in, I had it all. Beautiful relationship physically and obviously of everything we had. It wasn't like always a bad relationship. It just dissolved. We weren't connected anymore. I had a young daughter, had all the money I could probably ever have, had 7 properties, had 7 different businesses, different entities, featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine, all these other stuff, Fast Company, being interviewed by some of the major players. And outside looking in, I had it all. But one thing I didn't have was my own sanity and clear and concise vision on what I really wanted and having it a balance in all areas of my life. And when I talk about balance, I'm not talking about work-life balance. I don't know the difference now, Catherine, of work and play anymore. This is just my life. But that was a long process for me, about a year. But that made me more powerful even when it comes to business. I don't need to tell people that anymore. I was mentioning this to a good friend of mine. We're actually business partners. We did Miami Inc. And he's a pretty big name out there, Mike Diamond. And he's an addiction specialist. He's like 15 years sober. He's worked with some big names out there and teaching, obviously helping them and serving them and not being an addict or not doing drugs anymore. And these are some major players in the game that he's helped. So he's done some amazing things. But I was talking to him about it the other day. We're having a call about some of the things we're expanding on in the UK. And he mentioned for people that don't do the work in the dark times when no one's watching, they get exposed in the bright lights. And I love the way that he said that. Mm-hmm. Now I won't be exposed in the bright lights. That's why when you turn that little red light on, we're live, I'm 100%. We're going. But I could do it in my business life, but I couldn't do that much in my personal life. I would get off of work and I put all the effort into my jobs and in my businesses and flying around and structuring deals and building out programs and making such a huge impact. And I was giving everybody else in my life that I was doing it for, I was giving them what was left of me, not the best of me.
I agree with what you're saying about the work-life balance, because if you love what you do, it's not even work. It just meshes in everything. But what I'm hearing is like we have 8 domains, the way I see it, 8 different areas of our lives that all vary in importance from one person to the next. But I'm hearing that you weren't really paying attention and digging into what you valued in your other domains, what was most important to you in your other domains outside of work and relationships to become satisfied with your life overall and who you were.
It was an ego problem. A lot of high achievers suffer from this. You can't destroy your ego. You need to learn how to manage your ego, like your fight or flight mechanism, right? You have that one brain. Okay. And this is what people don't understand about the human mind. They don't understand how it works and how it operates. Then you have the other part of your brain. It's more like a librarian, a person that stores all that subconscious information there for you to need it at some point. So if it's a life to death situation, you're going to pull out information you haven't thought about in years and you'll put it into that conversation or in that event. Then you have the other part. Well, let's talk about that neocortex and slowing down time. But when you're looking into this, where I really suffered from is that ego. It's a dumb brain. Okay. You need to keep him busy or keeping her busy if you're a woman. Keep them busy on something and keeping them distracted and not suppressing, but keeping them busy and focusing on something else and focusing on a solution rather than a problem and understanding what that problem or threat could be and could do to you where it's not really a threat in the first place because everything's an illusion. It's not real. Like nothing's real. My past is not real. Suffering is not real. It's an illusion. But then once you gain that knowledge, and I've read over 1,500 books in the last 5 to 7 years. I try to read 2 every 2 weeks, and that's difficult sometimes. I want to take it in and apply the information, but not just try to get information. I want to use explicit knowledge, not just information, right? Mm-hmm. But once you gain all this information, you realize that it's all an illusion because people spend so much of their time in the past and in the future, not in present, because present is a gift. That's why it's called a present. Right now is a gift. So I don't take for granted the conversation that we're having right now. There's nothing else going on for me. Nothing. I'm having a conversation with you, and I'm not focusing on the things I got to do later after this call or after this recording. I'm talking about only thing with you and being dialed in. I wasn't doing that in my personal life. My phone would be next to me. I would be at dinner. I would be thinking about business. It isn't like I was trying to be malicious or hurting people. I was trying to protect them because I was trying to build something out and doing something massive that they couldn't understand, but that's okay. But I understood that piece. That's where wasn't present enough to understand. And all the issues, if I was present, 100% present and dialed in, I would have picked up on it using my emotional intelligence, but it blindsided me.
Yes. So I'm hearing you've made a really great shift when it comes to mindfulness and intentionality in the moment, instead of always thinking about next steps or what needs to happen next in your business or anywhere else. And you mentioned earlier a panic attack.
Yeah.
And anxiety. Oftentimes, anxiety comes out in our brains limiting us and telling us you can't do it. And it really keeps us stuck from leaving our comfort zone and achieving all the type of success that you achieved in business. So I'm really interested in finding out how the anxiety looked for you and how it affected your life.
That's a really, really good question. I've always been the type of person where I wouldn't say really suppressing my emotions. I knew what I wanted to get done, but I couldn't control the ego part of me, and I would say things that I potentially wouldn't mean. This is where people can really suffer from narcissistic type of capabilities and ability, like the way that they would do things, gaslight people and whatnot. But you have to be aligned. I was even picking up on it because I believe all of us at some point of our lives have narcissistic tendencies. The ones that become a little bit more aware and are real aligned, you can break that. You can change anything. So I'm listening to some of these people that think they specialize in. They don't have a PhD. They don't have anything other than a certificate of them thinking that everybody's a narcissist. No, not everyone's a narcissist. It's about the time and figuring these things out. But when you're going into detail and going in, for me, my anxiety, I was trying to focus on it and deal with it and living in that moment and embracing. It's like, so where I learned how to kind of figure this out is a cultivation of silence and a cultivation of self-discovery and investigation for myself. And being alone in my own thoughts completely. I can do it. I could do it before. I wouldn't have gotten to the levels of success that I have achieved before that year, this past year. But I wasn't all the way 100% inside of it and really wholly like everything inside of me and aligned. And that's where you can raise your vibration and polarize. You sit on a different frequency. It's just amazing. And you attract the people that you should have in life. That's what karma is all about. You have someone doing something to you. And if you do something back to them, you're now still attracting that same cycle into your life. You're recreating your own trauma and your own suffering with you not even realizing it and getting stuck in that behavioral pattern. But when I paid attention to this, I started putting in that work and I started paying attention to, I started listening to myself and my intuition a lot more. And I was like, damn, these are my faults and I can 100% own some of mine, but that's why they were doing what they were doing at this point. And now I don't feel a certain way, or I'm not angry at that person, because if they were doing it to me, then I would be angry too. And I would have the same reaction, but they didn't have the information that I've had over the years. And that's where I failed. I should have been leading with what I'm afraid of, not blah, 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 whatever. It takes two people to be in a relationship. It takes two people to argue. It takes two people to whatever, right? You would agree to that? Yes.
Absolutely.
But it also takes two people to argue. It takes two people to do whatever. So both of them are doing in a way of hurting each other and resentment and whatnot and shame and guilt and whatever. You're creating the same cycle and nothing will ever get done, because one person's based on emotions and based on empathy. The other one's based on resentment and just like, man, to hell with it. I'm done with it, and pushing things off and sweeping underneath a rug. That's where I learned this from my family. My dad's the kind of person where he would get caught up in his own ego and say things that he would never do and try to sweep it underneath a rug like that shit was never said. Well, I suffered from that, and I realized that my panic attack came from me really investigating that and then going through what I was going through in my personal life. Of course, I was still doing what I'm doing and having amazing amount of success, but I wasn't all the way completely breaking through that barrier. And I know I'm getting long-winded on this, but when I was in the Navy, it talked about, I had these fighter jets that breaking through sound barriers. The pilots would tell me when they're about to break through that sound barrier, that's where the cockpit, that feels like that plane is going to blow up.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you're getting all the pressure coming from the outside, right? Mm-hmm. But you'll break through a barrier. And I believe that's the only way I can describe my panic attack. I thought I was dying.
Yeah.
I've never had a panic attack in my life. I woke up and I called, and of course you call your mom when you're sick or whatever. I thought I was having a heart attack. I couldn't breathe, but then she soothed me and calmed me down, went to the doctor, and it was like, you had a panic attack. How much stress do you have? I'm like, oh, I'm on a lot. And I told them what was going on in my life and what I've done. They were like, you're in good health. I mean, I was like, listen, this past year, I've lost all the weight. I'm down like 35 pounds, almost boxing weight again. I'm feeling good, but everything comes from here, right? But that was my moment breaking through that barrier. But once I broke through that barrier, now I wasn't trying to be like a tough guy anymore. I started by really taking care of myself.
That's amazing. All of our feelings and actions are based on our thoughts.
Yes.
Do you remember, or are you aware of now, what your thoughts were about yourself that were leading you to this anxiety and this panic?
I wasn't in a moment of surrendering control. Mm-hmm. That's where the anxiety came from. I suffered from this my whole life. I need to be in control. And that's where a lot of high achievers suffer from this, and perfection or whatever that might be, perfectionist. It was hard for me because if I can't control a situation, I'm not controlling it to just for me to get a win from it. I mean, that's obviously not what I'm about anyway. But what I'm talking about, if I can't control the situation, so I had to really surrender those feelings and those thoughts and trying to direct those into them. Like you mentioned, those thoughts. You can't control these thoughts, but you can direct them to a positive outlet. My problem is when I would have a thought, and I wasn't directing it to a positive outlet of surrendering. I was trying to direct and trying to figure it out in the future on how I'm able to make sure that this is the outcome that we get to.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Oh,
so that's where I spiraled even all the work I was doing. And that was the universe's way, or God's way, in my opinion, of making sure that I was ready for that next level.
Yeah. As a recovering perfectionist, that is what anxious and perfectionistic people do. We want to control the outcome so that we know we get what we want and we can handle it. Part of what we're telling ourselves is we can't handle it if we don't get the outcome that we want. Mm-hmm. The problem is we put so much pressure on ourselves because we think we have more power than we do.
Mm-hmm. We don't have that power.
No, we are one variable in many variables.
Oh, wow. This is powerful. Love that.
And the result on the other side is the result of all these variables. And we're one. But we think if we try hard enough and we think enough about the future, we can control all the other variables in the equation that on the other side get us the results.
Wow.
Letting go of realizing we can't do that is the most liberating thing in the world.
Yeah. Now you're experiencing bliss.
Yes, exactly.
And joy, and just 100%. Like, and I just touch on this. When my daughter was born, it was the first time in my life I was crying again ever to experience joy. And I didn't know how to deal with those feelings. And that was a starting point. That was a spark for me to go back in. And I suppressed that, and not running away completely, but I was suppressing that feeling of being 100% vulnerable because of the death of my sister.
Yes.
And I was like, holy shit. It all made sense then, because it was the most petrified, joyful moment. And I don't know. I was like, hey, it was just a weird feeling. And I was like, I know this feeling. It was the first time that I felt the feeling. The universe forced me to feel that feeling. And I was like, wow, this feels great, but this is scary. But that's a surrender piece, right?
Yes.
And I'm so grateful. And God does things, and I believe, to serve us 100%. You mentioned the competitive advantage in wine. Like some spiritual people say this, when you pass away and you pass over, God's going to introduce you to the version on what he created and what you should have become. Well, I go a little further than that. I can't look my sister in the face and her look at me and go, this is what you did with your life. That drives me.
Yes. And the minute that you realized that you could handle the pain, the negative emotions that came from losing your sister, was the minute you allowed yourself a broader spectrum of emotions, at which joy is the very
Yeah, I started dumping all the other things that weren't serving me at that time. And so that way I was able to add so many more things in.
Yes.
What I mean by adding things in, I was just shedding layers of myself. Mm-hmm. People think they need everything externally. Like, no, this is my home. This is my heart. This is my choice. This is everything I have. All the pressure comes from the outside. You can't let it penetrate internal. Nobody's going to ever own any mind, body, or spirit of me ever if I'm continuing to keep putting in the work. but it's everyday process. Any day that ends in Y. There's not a someday. It's every day for me, not on Thursday, not on no, every day. It's an everyday process because it's not, people say, oh, you're healed. I'm not healed. This is a healing process. I'm never going to be 100% healed because I can't control the outside environment.
Right.
I can't control these things.
I have so many more questions. And one of them is, based on all of your experience and then all of your personal work, how has your definition of success changed?
100% it's changed. Like in the morning, it's part of my ritual that I go through and I put out in the universe what I want. I believe in law of attraction to an extent, and I don't want to get into that type of talk and what people believe, and I want to offend your listeners, and they do believe. I don't sit at home and try to meditate and try to go to an extent and drinking certain teas and all that stuff. If it works for you, it just works for me. What works for me is going through all that and going through a list of everything I'm grateful for at nighttime, and in the first part of the morning, me saying all the things that I'm grateful for. And then I'm going to start asking for what I want. I would do this years ago. And that's how I was able to manifest the life I have right now and the things I've created. You don't discover yourself. You create yourself from what you're given. And that's only things that the gifts that I have. I'm playing the cards I was dealt with. Because it might work for whatever works for you, whatever works for your listeners. Everyone's going to be different. But I know what works for me. I have my secret ingredient. I'm the secret me. I know how to work me. There's no instruction manual to us, right? We weren't given one. I know how to operate myself now. Luckily, I figured it out maybe before a lot of other people have figured this shit out. But when I go in the mornings, I start putting things out that I'm looking for in life. It used to be, I'm going to build this business. I'm going to have this. Now it's about, I just want peace.
Yes.
All I ask for is peace. Peace in every situation. I just look for the peace. And me having peace with their actions or inactions and things I cannot control, that's what keeps me aligned. That's my secret ingredient to my success. Because if I'm focusing on just being peaceful and being at peace, I can do anything else because I have the skills to do it.
Totally agree. I have the same 4 questions I ask myself every morning and the same routine I go through during the week because I know I'm a recovering perfectionist. I know what about me gets in my own way, and I have to remind myself so that I don't let it get in my way.
100%. And I love that. If you can just share with the listener, like the 4 questions. What are those 4 questions? I think I remember 3 out of the 4, but I just want to go off the top of my head from our last conversation.
Who do I want to be today?
That's right.
How do I want to show up for those that I love? What do I want to accomplish today? And what actions will that take?
That's why I wanted you to, because you mentioned that's where you sparked the thing, and I'm not going to ask the question. This is your show, right? But I get suffer from that sometimes being a guest. But you talk about show up. That's what I wasn't doing. I wasn't showing up and showing people who I was 100%. They were seeing a version of what I wanted them to see, not who I am, and the frequency and understanding. And that's what I believe true love is, recognizing the other person's energy and seeing them and just recognizing the beauty, the inner essence and beauty of that energy of that person's soul. And that's where freedom, they need to feel free. Yes. It's not control, right? So you can't control in this. The surrendering piece that people don't understand. They get into a relationship, they try to control the other person.
And when you're off in your head, right? When you're off,
easily do that.
You are not present to turn toward that person when they give you the little clue that they need you to.
And just stopping them and just tell them how much you appreciate them for what they do for you and what they do not do. And just recognizing the true essence of them. That's what I really suffered with, but I wasn't 100% aligned and feeling vulnerable enough in that conversation. And it wasn't, and granted, the other person and other parties maybe weren't creating an environment for me to feel safe at that time for me to really be able to communicate that. So that's something I had to learn too, is me not taking accountability for things that isn't my fault.
Yes.
See my point? That if we try to take 100% accountability, we think we need to take accountability for all their actions or inactions as well. No.
We just
only the shit you can control.
On what we've done and how to contribute to the cycle that is the relationship.
Right. And the next part is when you say, for instance, this is where I see a lot of people maybe try to get back together, or they, I don't know, resent the other person for the next 20 years. Like where I'm at right now, because I'm in 100% aligned, my role is to make sure that I'm going to raise a beautiful daughter and create a mind where all the things that maybe have dissolved in my previous relationship don't affect her at all. And I'm skilled enough to be able to do that. But a happy her is a happy ex. So I need to give her everything that she needs to be able to, obviously, but it'll be a different way. And I'm not insinuating that we wouldn't get back together one day or she meets the person of her dreams. It doesn't matter to me. These are all things I can't control. See my point?
Yes, absolutely.
I can control me, though.
Solely on what you value and how your actions and your words can contribute to that and take you closer to that.
That spark was for my daughter. I needed something to do it for.
Yes.
And then it shift from doing it for her. Like, I'm not working this hard, and I didn't start this journey and start this realignment process for myself. For me, I did it for her first, and then I discovered myself in that.
Yes, that's beautiful. And I could definitely go so many different directions in this conversation. But before we run out of time, I want to make sure we get to talk about your newest venture.
Yeah, right. And that's why I love our last conversation, because I cherish these kind of conversations. And I want the listeners to really understand. I've interviewed $500 million players in games, and me getting in meetings and board meetings with these people, they're looking at me, you know what I mean? Like they're inferior to me. Not like they're superior to me. No, it's backwards. How I'm able to do that with a confidence level, and they're wanting to do work with me. They're like, I got to do something with you. It'd be a travesty of us we don't do something together. Then I'm not going to name drop. These are some major players. But my thing is this: like, I put in so much work, I expect to meet them. That's how I'm able to do it with so much confidence.
And that's part of what's so exciting about me getting to have this conversation with you, because I'm the exact opposite of a player.
No, you're not. And just to kind of maybe expand on that, people don't realize how close they are of being able to achieve everything they've ever wanted in a business. They're that close. It takes that much. I'm telling you, if you focus on how can you serve and how can you make an impact and the type of impact and focusing on that, and you're raising your frequency and your vibration, you'll attract that life and it'll come to you in the moments you never thought. Wow. I was refreshing my computer one day when the deal went through and I got $12 million richer. Boop, just hit. Nuts, right? My feelings it had nothing to do with a dollar amount to me. It had nothing to do with any of that stuff. Now I'm like, what it meant for me, I look at that as a little bit more resentment that cost me my ex relationship. Because that's what I was building.
So tell me about this newest venture. It may not even be your newest venture, but tell me about your broadcasting and media network and what you're doing with that.
Right. Thank you for bringing that up. And this just came to me. Like I said, I was able to present the trade schools with a proposition and the two programs that I built, which they did a rebranding for the sales and the business programs, got those done and got it underneath their umbrella. Then I kind of got to a point where I was like, what do I do now? And that's like I said before, like I was on another show and they're like, oh, you're a sales guy. And I'm like, nah, that's where I come from. That was my intro to entrepreneurship. And from there, I've done a lot of great things. I'm just blessed. But the newest venture, and I really didn't know what I want to do. I was doing podcasting. I kind of had that in mind. I was like, well, how can I make more of an impact now with podcasting? Then I started interviewing guests. Then I realized how hard it is to get good guests to come on the show. I just do everything by referrals now. So people that we know together collectively, the ones that love the art of podcasting, because that's what I think podcasting is to me, is just now I'm able to show how I'm able to do what I've done in my career by interviewing guests. Like I haven't had a guest that come on the show that hasn't said to me at some part of that duration of that conversation, no one's ever asked me that question. That's an art, just a skill. And I've honed in on that craft. That's my whole idea for the podcast. It's like, okay, so that's where the podcast, now to develop the network. Of course, you have to do, when you do things the right way, you have to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. I wasn't doing it to make money. So I'm trying to build not just a network, a community of podcasters and shows and teaching them how to monetize and make money from this and not charge them anything. And then I'm able to take that, go to sponsors, go to this. I'm trying to take someone that maybe has 10 people to listen to their show and them getting exposed to hundreds of millions of people through my network that I've been so grateful to be able to meet, and those types of networks and getting them more exposure. That's what success is to me. It's those who get exposed to that way of thinking. Some of us get exposed at the beginning and have a silver spoon in your mouth, but some of us get exposed later on in life. when you're exposed to success, you can take off.
So another win-win.
Yep, that's my point. That's the name of it, called Winject. It's like I'm injecting everybody with a winning mentality. So that was the whole. Obviously, you can tell that I'm a visionary and I can think that way. But I put that much effort into connecting all the dots and the things that people don't normally see in business, and that came from exposure and me being around the right people.
Well, I just think that's a perfect exclamation point to our conversation, although I could continue to talk to you.
Yeah, I feel free to do whatever. You're the only thing that I have going on at this moment, so we're good.
Right back at you. Where can everyone find out more about you online?
ChrisRossOfficial.com is my, I guess, home. That's where you can find like pretty much, I guess, all the landing, I guess the hub and finding everything else. But if you want to find anything about shows and all kind of exclusive content and all the things that we have going on, winject.com, WINJECT.com. And they have a thing on there where it says just go and follow. And this is watching content and controlling people's content and showing them how to monetize. But that's pretty much, I just want people to listen to the show, the Win-Win Effect. I just drive everybody there. And from there, they get to know me. They get to know some of the guests. Got guests like yourself coming on. And then, I have found about podcasting, it's not the major names that bring the most to the show because everyone's heard their stories. Mm-hmm. It's the ones that have such a compelling story and have really something to say. And that's something that I talk about with the Winjet. Anyone could put a microphone in their face and think they can say something and they have something to say. But some people have something to say, but they're not plugged into the right thing for people to hear it. Mm-hmm. That's what I do for people. I plug them into the right channels, right stations. For people that need to hear their message, they're able to hear it on that frequency. So that's what we do.
Oh, I love that. And I finish up the podcast in the same way each week by asking my guest, what is one imperfect action that you suggest we all take today to get a little bit closer to our best lives?
That's a really jam-packed question.
Loaded, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't get this kind of way often. And I'm not trying to buy time, but that was a really good question. Take some time today and really break down how much time you actually spend alone in your own thoughts.
Love that.
And then ask yourself the next question. Are you giving yourself enough time for yourself?
Yes.
Some people do it in the morning. For myself, it's right when I wake up, okay? And that's sometimes best for other people. Whatever that part of that day and whatever it looks like. There's so many people that are just controlled by the universe, controlled by all these other things. They touch their phone, they get lost in all that bullshit. I think social media is ruining this world, but it's helping the world connect. But they're not connecting in the right way. They're doing it in a malicious way. Everyone's searching for acceptance and they're unhealthy. Mental health is a big thing. People are killing themselves. This pandemic is not just someone dying from a virus. Bless your hearts if somebody is, it's a real thing. But mental health, you got people drinking, doing drugs, doing all kind of things, having arguments with their relationships, dissolved marriages, and you have all this stuff. This is real. That's the real pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And
take some time for yourself to really dig in.
I second your motion. I have so many clients that come to me and they really have been taught, especially women, that if they focus on themselves at all, that means they're selfish.
Yeah, you need to be selfish. You put it. So how many hours? Oprah Winfrey, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, right? All these major players that all done everything they wanted out of life. They had the same 24 hours in a day.
That's exactly right.
How much time do you put in for yourself, though? Yes. Do you love yourself?
Yes.
That was my process. During this past year, I was selfish enough to fall in love with my flaws and fall in love with myself again. I gave myself permission to fall in love with myself.
And that right there is the key. Do some time thinking about yourself and what you need, and also what you have been looking at as flaws, how those contribute to the complete package that is you, so that you get clear on your you-ness that you bring to the table in life.
Right.
That nobody else can bring.
And then taking that and making an impact and win-win from everything. Because when you're being selfish and fall in love with yourself, this is where people say, and you mentioned that comment about, especially, it does happen, especially with women, they're thinking they're selfish. I need this time. I need my me time. Sometimes in relationship, people screaming that, and they're not giving them that time and suffocating them and all that stuff. And then they're being controlled. And that's why they end up going and having a fair, and they just wanted to feel free, right? I felt so alive. That's one of the things that everyone says. They felt alive because they're suffocating and aren't getting the needs and wants and desires. But if you're asking yourself and you're alone and being selfish just for that moment, I love these numbers. When you look at 1% better every day, 1% of every day, and the time is around 12 minutes. You mean to tell me you don't have 12 minutes to be alone in your own thoughts and kind of asking yourself those 4 questions that you mentioned? And I love your show. I would love to help you any way that I can in the future of expanding your listenership or whatever that might be. And I look forward to really helping that. And I hope the listeners took some of the things from my long-winded sometimes answers. I love conversating with great people like yourself. So I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I've had the best time talking with you, and I look forward to many other deep and meaningful conversations in the future.
100%. Well, guys, Happy New Year. Do what you do, whatever time it is for the world right now, but just focus on what you can control and then surrender all the other stuff.
Totally. I second that motion. And until we meet back here next week, go out and take some imperfect action toward the life that you want. If you are enjoying this podcast, would you take a moment to go to iTunes and subscribe? It is so easy to do, and it would mean a lot. This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information with regard to the subject matter covered. This is given with the understanding that neither the host or guests are providing legal, mental health, or other professional information. If you need a professional, I encourage you to reach out to one.